Breaking news. Welcome to Earful of Dirt, the Major League Rugby podcast. I'm live with Craig Glendale. You can find him at American RFC. He has shaved. He doesn't want the COVID hanging out in his beard.
True, but my head needs a shave now. I think my wife may be called in to give me a high and tight at this point.
Should I send you my clippers? I mean,
we have clippers. We just don't have anyone proficient in the use of. No one's qualified on the clipper.
I cut my own hair.
Yeah, I think we're going to try.
It was Friday. It was rough. I mean, Brooke was like calling me out on Instagram because she was holding the mirror for me. She was like, "Oh, somebody pays attention when he goes to the barber shop." So two major pieces of news, and then a very interesting interview happened this weekend. The Colorado Raptors withdrew from Major League Rugby. The letter that was sent to the players is signed by Mayor Mike Dunafon and informing them good luck and all that stuff, but that they're out. So I would say that if that is the case, the mayor has some type of role with the Raptors, you'd think, but we'll get to that later. What do you think of the announcement of the Major League Rugby draft?
Exciting. I think people had discussed for a while the possibility of a draft, what it would look like, would there be a draft? I know a draft is not necessarily a commonplace thing in other countries and more rugby centric sporting cultures, but it's definitely an American thing. I love drafts. I love the football draft. I'm super excited for our fantasy draft in a couple days, and I'm going to love this Major League Rugby draft.
Yeah, there were some interesting pieces of commentary. One of the reasons, like, why is this happening to American rugby? I was like, I mean, I don't understand why it's a bad thing. From a perspective, like when you look at it, I think we're at capacity for the most part for talent ID at the club level. I think that we should continue to use the clubs and have combines and bring players through the club system. We should do that because you are going to find players doing that. But we aren't in the same place where we can bring up like 10, 15 guys a year from one club directly into another club. You know, I can't go to Nyack today and take 10 of their starters and put them in Rooney because I don't think the front line of Nyack is at the level of the current front line of New York. Now, can you pick and choose some players? And same thing with Old Blue. Can you pick and choose some players? And same thing, you can find a player down in NYRC who's probably a good athlete, or even Gotham or whatever. You're going to be able to pick one guy. I mean, and then you can send your players back to the clubs later on and, help raise those levels. But I think we're at capacity right now. I don't think the new MLR clubs that are going to come online are going to be able to, in a sense, raid their senior rugby clubs to build their teams.
I mean, if they can, that's a one-time thing. You get one large, pull from local clubs, and after that, you're going to have to, eventually you're going to have to start finding a new source of people. There's not going to be enough, even if you take the best 15 people today from every local club, in a couple of years, those people retire, they do other things, they go to Europe, whatever. You're going to need a larger source of replenishments.
So if you like from a perspective to give everyone something is what do drafts do for a league? So Craig, do you believe in things like a salary cap?
Sure. Yeah.
Do you believe in things like a foreign player cap?
Yeah.
Well, I'm trying to illustrate some specific things here. So what is an import card an asset?
Yeah.
Okay, so there we go. Is cap space an asset?
Of course.
So what is the draft pick?
Also an asset.
There you go. So what we're getting with the draft is a few things. So there's assets that you create via draft, and how you do that is draft picks. So every team gets picks. We're saying there's gonna, like, the press release said 4 rounds, and at the time, I think it was 13 teams before the I guess announcement of the Colorado Raptors leaving the league. And that
Glendale again, now that they withdrew. I feel like they're back to Glendale.
Yeah, well, I'm never going to call them Colorado. I think we decided to never call them Colorado, just for fun, because they were Glendale for so long. But so Glendale withdraws from the league, and so now we're down to 12 members in the draft, and you know, there's the 13th team is like, everyone's like mad. And the comment, okay, there was some clarification put out by owner Bill Webb, and I think that needed to be a part of, like, the original press release that had comments from general manager Mark Winokur. And here's the thing. So the Arrows, like any team in the United States, they exist for 2 specific missions. I would say the league in general exists for 2 things: to develop North American players, to feed the national teams of North America, which are Canada, Les Rouges, and the Eagles. That is one of the hallmark missions of Major League Rugby. How do you go about doing that? We'll talk about that too. But the other one is to build and develop a sustainable and viable commercial product, right? So those are the 2, like, around rugby. So those are the 2 missions of Major League Rugby. Well,
couldn't do the first without the second. So
yeah, exactly. So, and I'm not saying it's either or. I was like, these are the 2 missions of Major League Rugby: right. Develop a sustainable and viable commercial rugby product, and feed the North American national teams. So it could end up being feeding the Mexican national team at some point too, if there's ever a team in Mexico. But so where the Arrows kind of run into a problem, not really the Arrows, but as far as them participating in the draft is concerned, is we have had visa issues the last 3 seasons in Major League Rugby. And it is at the point where if you do not have a senior cap, you will not get a visa to play in the United States. So that means Canadian college players wouldn't really drafting them. The only team that could actually draft that is the Arrows anyways. So that's kind of why the Arrows aren't part of the draft. However, so is solution to, like, fixing the visa thing. We're pretty close. There are some wickets that the league has to jump through to get there. And I think it's like number of years the organization has, you know, been operating, and total revenues that the organization has. And depending on who you talk to, we're pretty close to the total revenues. And I think if I'm throwing a dart at the board, the number of years that the league has to operate is probably 5, is my guess. And it's specifically because P1As, the idea with a lot of visas, especially now under this administration, but really it goes back to the end of the Obama administration, is tightening things up a lot. And it's like, is this person good enough to take an American's position? And I think once we've been around, say 4 or 5 years, depending on what's ever going on, the Canadian visa issue becomes like the NHL, MLB, NBA, like there doesn't become there. It just becomes a rubber stamp, and it's done. The other guys, I don't know about them. But the Canadians will be a part of this draft, and it will be before the 10th year in the league, and it will be in the 5th year of the league, but it won't be that far away. And
it also because they primarily take Canadian players, so they're also not especially interested in the American collegiate.
Yeah, I would say plenty of the U.S. teams would be interested in Canadian collegiate players because the Canadian college system produces some very, very good players. So,
but either way, they weren't going to be in the draft.
No, with 4 picks, they're probably going to pick Canadians anyways, right? But in reality, is opening up the Canadian market to American teams gives them more high-level talent coming out of college. So it really doesn't hurt the Arrows as much as it hurts the U.S. teams because there are, I think it was 27 Canadians that don't play for the Arrows that play in MLR. Like you got the Larson twins that play on different teams. You've got a couple of guys playing for Atlanta. You've got Mo Abdelmanem playing for the Austin Gilgronis, and you've got a bunch of guys like if half the Canadian national team plays for the Arrows, the other half plays for Seattle.
But I don't mean I'm wrong here though. But I thought the draft, regardless of whether Toronto decided to participate, before they announced they were not going to participate, the draft was still only for American collegiate players. An American team couldn't draft Canadian.
No, they can't because it's the visa problem. Like that is the real problem of Toronto not participating. It's that the Canadian college players aren't able to participate because we have a visa problem. Once that gets fixed and they can be drafted, then it's fair game for everyone. So then, and the reason why I say this is Bill Webb clarified their position, and he said currently a Canadian collegiate graduate would not qualify for a P1A visa. So therefore, there is no reason since Canadian players are not eligible for the draft because they would not get a visa if drafted, the Arrows will not participate in the draft. And when that occurs, we will. There's no reason for will they draft American players at some point? They may. But there is no reason for them, no reason to participate if they can't, if the only way for a Canadian player to go south is to have a senior cap right now.
They skipped the U.S., went right to South American players.
Yeah. I don't know. Those are the facts. So it was their mission for them is to develop Canadian national team players. And then, but their mission is also to have a viable product to sell tickets to. And it is easier to get a visa to Canada, apparently, to play sports than it is to the United States, at least for Major League Rugby right now. That's just the way it is, I guess. So that's that. Draft, I think, is going to be fun. You're seeing a lot of kids, graduating seniors, very interested from a variety of programs, whether they're blue blood programs or small programs. Guys are declaring, and that's cool. That shows there's interest.
Every an hour, some person says, "I've just declared for the MLR."
The more of those, the more that shows that there is interest in playing Major League Rugby. The moment that was announced, guys declared for the draft.
I like it.
And if we're saying it's a marketing ploy, don't care because it worked.
Yeah,
it's not a ploy. It's not a ploy if it works. Okay.
Yeah,
it worked. Guys declared for the draft. So if these college players declare for the draft, that means their parents are going to pay attention. So that means more fans. I
hope they have a good media, program around the draft that people can follow it, and it's there's some kind of coverage that'll be fun for fans. We'll see.
Should be. I think it'll. There will get some build up. It's going to be a good piece of content. And if everyone pays attention to the draft. The number one draft in the United States is, of course, the NFL draft, and it kills it. And the NBA draft has been trying to become like the NFL draft. The baseball draft is trying to become like the NFL draft. And this was baseball. This was Major League Baseball's change. Anyone else not getting sound? I don't know what to tell you, Mike. I can even check.
Some fellas smiling on their.
Let me check on my end if I get sound, because I didn't mute this. So yeah, we're getting sound. So I just checked that. So baseball, like, to the point that they wanted to be like the NFL draft, they wanted to be special. What did they do? They decided to move the draft to Omaha right before the College World Series.
Yeah.
That shows you how much college baseball has become a drafting ground for Major League Baseball, because it used to not be. Like, guys used to go to college and play college ball because they had no chance to, and it was the last thing to show scouts that they could play. And what we've seen in baseball is an investment in the game by schools. And so more talent is seeking 4-year degrees and getting further developed in college. That's what we're seeing with college baseball.
The problem with the baseball draft, though, is that unlike almost any other sport, the players that are drafted don't appear on the major league team for years.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's like hockey. So
5 years.
Interesting thing, right? So baseball and hockey, you have Carter. We're going to talk about that, man. We are going to talk about that. That is the reason why we are here. I'm sorry we've been talking for 17 minutes about the draft, but the people talk about why, like, MLRs needs to have academies. I was like, well, baseball and hockey basically have academies. They just license out the development of their talent to affiliates. So, like, if you look at a baseball team, so Major League Baseball, if you look at a Major League Baseball team, they're gonna have a AAA affiliate, a AA affiliate, and several single A affiliates. And also a single A rookie ball affiliate. And then they're going to have a short season Arizona League or Cactus League, or Cactus. It's called an Arizona League and a Florida League affiliate that is directly controlled by the team. And then you also have the Arizona Fall League, which is where all the top prospects come and play a month-long season. In fact, I got to see Tim Tebow play once. Because he was considered a top prospect by the Mets that year. But they have it is an academy system. Like, it is. Like, that is what it is. You train day in and day out and you play games. So now I think the evolution of the MLR draft becomes much like the MLS draft. That is, if a player comes through an MLR academy and he goes to college and he doesn't go directly to the senior squad, he will have the option of returning to the team of the academy he graduated from, and the team won't have to spend a draft pick to get him, or he can enter the draft. That is the evolution that I see for the MLR draft going forward, because that's what makes sense. If everyone's going to have an academy, you're going to want rights to those players, right? So that's what happens in the MLS.
Makes sense to me.
So the other thing we're here for is Colorado withdrawing, and this is where Glenzit. So, what's your opinion, man? I read the letter that Dunafon sent to the players, and I'm just like, come on, man. And I talked to a few of the players, and I know there were rumors about this back in October, and there were rumors about a rogue league starting up. And, there is some information out there that we've sort of learned that it could be a real thing. And, there could be not a competing league, because it's going to be a league that has much less funding and I think much lower salary cap. If you think $500,000 is a low salary cap, it's probably their salary cap will probably be less than season 1 salary cap for MLR, and they won't be on TV because they don't want to have those costs. So they're not going to attract them.
If a poorly funded league falls in the wood and there's no one there to hear it, did it really fall?
There you go. So, I spoke to a few of the players, and there was a lot of disbelief. There was a lot of devastation. Not disappointment, because from what I was told, they were blindsided. They didn't know, that this was going to be a thing. That they were just going to withdraw from the league. I think the players were of the mind that the team would probably be sold. Because if it's about money, then sell your team, because you can at least recoup some of your investment, maybe even all of your investment, right? If it's about, are you willing to write off a couple million, say $5 million? You just sunk into this thing.
Well, that's the question, right? Is what is actually going to happen to the organization that is now Glendale Raptors?
Well, the players are contracted to the league, so the players will probably get picked up via the. Hello, Rick. How's it going? The players will probably be, I guess, this sounds weird, distributed via the reallocation of players that occurs at the end of the year. Basically, there are teams where they can't get to a contract agreement with players. The players have central rights with the league, and teams have scouted these players and signed them. And this has happened the first 2 seasons of the league.
Yep.
Where basically waivers. It's basically there's a bunch of players that go into waivers, and teams claim them off waivers. That's basically what happens. And then you also have an expansion draft. So you could end up seeing that half the Raptors get sent to LA and half the Raptors get sent to Dallas. That could be what happens.
So that's the players, and that makes sense. But what about the organization? You know this stuff better than I do, but my understanding is they own shares of Major League Rugby, right? As a Glendale.
Well, so what happens to the organization? Well, the Raptors
shares.
The Raptors have said that they are withdrawing from Major League Rugby. I've heard that there was an attempt for a negotiated sort of resolution where the league or an owner, much like how the Gilgronis were purchased by the LA team or the LA ownership group, that they were trying to sell the team to the league. And there were some funky details, which I wouldn't have agreed to personally. If the rumors are true, I would not have purchased the team for those conditions. Put it that way.
So failure to reach a deal. So now what happens to Glendale's ownership of MLR? Their shares in MLR?
Based on how I understand it, is they forfeit the shares.
Okay.
Because, they're based on what I understand is they are forfeiting their license to operate a team and whatever rights if this somehow single entity was sold to a gajillionaire.
Yeah, that just doesn't make any sense. Why not sell it? If you're just getting a zero on it, no matter what you sell it for, it's better than a zero.
Yeah, that's what I don't get.
Right, I feel there has to be more to it.
If this is about money, you sell the team. So what is this about? I think it's about at the beginning of the league, Glendale was the only place that had full control of a venue. It was the only purpose-built sort of rugby venue that wasn't owned by a college. There are a few purpose-built college facilities, but it was basically the only purpose-built professional venue in the country.
Which is awesome.
Yeah, which is great. So, like, they supported, rugby, awesome. But then we get into that interview that Matt had with Mayor Dunafon, and I'm like, he says that he never owned a share in the Raptors. But the paperwork says that his wife is the alternate governor of Raptors 2017 LLC.
Yeah.
So,
we don't know the details, obviously, but whatever the technical ownership and beneficial ownership is, it seems clear that at least he has
a relationship.
Yeah.
With the Raptors,
an insider to that organization with a great deal of influence, whether he technically owns a share or not, who knows? Apparently, he doesn't own shares anymore since they're being forfeit. Large shares. But yeah, I think it's the interview was strange. You could tell, or at least it seemed to me. I think most people would agree that Matt McCarthy was a little taken aback by some of the answers, to the extent that the mayor was saying that he is not an owner, doesn't know what's going on, almost acting like he was a complete outsider or just a contractual, counterparty, because he's involved with the field itself as opposed to the team. I don't know why. Between the message and the interview, I feel like they haven't said anything clearly about what they want to do. They've made some vague references to developing the American team, but anything could.
I don't see. So let's dive into that. They have brought in some crossover athletes that you would have thought they would have invested in and developed and brought through to the MLR team. There was a 6'6" offensive tackle from LSU 2 years ago that went through their summer crossover academy. And then last year, played one game at prop for the Merlins in the PRP. One game. He was not rostered at any other point that year for the Merlins, never played for the Raptors. Why would you take a first choice American athlete and not use him as a lock? Because you got him leaned out. Like, he's playing rugby, right? So that means he's going to be able to move a little bit around the park. And their scrum needed a lot of work.
That's why they put him at prop.
Hey, our props are awful, so let's see if this guy can play prop. There's a lot of things to tear apart, because if it's about developing American rugby athletes and American athletes to be rugby players, the Raptors did not invest in coaching to then develop the crossover athletes they recruited to come into the senior team. And if we're about local American rugby athletes, their strategic partnerships with colleges weren't even in their catchment area. They did not partner with Colorado State, which has a pretty storied history as a rugby school. They did not partner with CU Boulder, which had a pretty decent rugby program before it was suspended. They partnered with Duke and Clemson. Clemson's in Atlanta's catchment area. Duke is in Washington, in DC's. There's so many strange things that went on where I'm just like, why?
In theory, you could. It's not beyond belief that they could just have had a change of heart and said, look, we got into this with a certain idea. One thing led to another. We found ourselves in a place we didn't think we were really getting out of what we wanted. So we're just calling creative differences and going our own way. And that's.
But still, you could sell the team.
Yeah, that I don't understand. There's got to be more to it than that, because I just can't see why you would willingly take a zero when you could have a chance to do the exact same thing but get proceeds for a team sale. I feel like there must be more nuances there that we don't know yet. Hopefully that'll all come out as time goes on. And I would love us to have a better national team. If they have a great plan that's financed and funded and it's going to draw, the attention of the players and the coaches, that'd be great.
Financing that, because it ain't going to be USA Rugby.
I don't know.
It ain't going to be World Rugby anymore either. So interesting thing, before they announced all this hunya, and before COVID-19 pandemic destroyed everything, the World Rugby was going to fund a USA Rugby Academy. And it was going to be based in Glendale. Yep. And the academy was going to focus on, they had two scouting events. One was going to be in Hawaii to cast a wide net on island kids who just get lost, who go back to the island and just stop playing whatever sport they are, and try to get them and ask them if they want to try rugby, and then send them to Utah where all the crossover athletes from the contiguous, the lower 48 contiguous United States were invited to be scouted, and then potentially earn an invitation to a resident academy that would have been hosted by Glendale for a period. I think it was like 4 months. And the idea was put these guys in a daily training environment. They're eating, drinking, sleeping rugby 40 hours a week, getting a little bit of a stipend, and they would earn MLR contracts at the end of that. Like that was the idea.
First season of The Ultimate Fighter.
Yeah. That's basic. World Rugby Films probably would have filmed the crap out of that, and we would have seen it on like NBC, Olympic Channel or something.
Maybe that's just what their plan is now. Maybe they're just going to do that. And, if it's World Rugby or they're –
World Rugby isn't going to be bailing out more than just USA Rugby. So I don't know if that academy project is going to be viable this time around.
Who knows? They just keep shoveling their money into the USA Rugby fire.
Yeah.
Why stop now?
I just, as far as there were some interesting comments, like all 22, like camera angles, like that made no sense. One of the things that annoyed some people that we know were the comments about what Glendale looked like at the beginning, saying that the team that they first fielded had no rugby experience. And one of the people was like, that was from that time, was like, every single person on that team had played rugby in high school. Yeah. That wasn't the case. Like, we weren't just all brand new. We were all kind of brand new together, and that we built something. And, we didn't know all the stuff in the head shed, but like as players, we thought we built something. And it's like, so now do people feel betrayed? If you read the stuff on social media, the fans are not, Reddit, Twitter, elsewhere, the fans are not happy.
Now, who's ever happy on Reddit or Twitter?
Well, I don't know, but this is like, if you were a Baltimore Colts fan, this is like the Colts leaving in the middle of the night, or this is like the Chargers moving to Los Angeles, or the Rams leaving St. Louis. I mean, we can't really talk about the Rams leaving Anaheim. It was kind of a good riddance type event. Like that, there were Rams fans that were very annoyed that the Rams left, but there were many Rams fans that were like, good riddance.
Except in all these cases, the franchise continues to exist in some other location. Is there an example you can think of where a team just like folded up and vanished?
Just voluntarily folds?
Yeah.
Nothing. What? He's like, we don't agree philosophically with you having non-American players. And this is where I take umbrage with that statement, because Glendale imported players for a decade.
Yeah.
They poached players from teams, and they got guys coming over from either on vacation visas or sponsored visas and played for them. Before Major League Rugby, they had like 3 Georgians on the team.
Yeah. I mean, Again, that's true, but it also doesn't mean just because they did in the past that has to be their mindset going forward. They could, in theory, just wake up one day and say, you know what, no more importing players. Now we're going to focus on the American-born players. I think if they're going to do that, though, I want to know who's going to be the coach, who's writing the checks, and how are they getting the best American players to be interested enough to go participate in the program.
I mean, it's the same way with like MLR. It's like you're like originally Glendale's academy didn't pay players. Now you're going to have to pay players if you think you're going to get players to show up. Period. And then he said an interesting thing is like, okay, players can go play MLR. And what are they going to do? What do they do in their off season? Oh, they need to train. Do you really think that MLR teams are going to want their players to go train in Glendale? Do you really think that? I don't think so. Especially if you look at a bunch of the teams, players, some of the foreign players leave and they go home and they come back. They're not gonna. They're gonna go down to play Curry Cup. They're gonna go down to play Mitre 10. They're not gonna move to just train in Glendale.
We're not talking about foreign players anyway.
I mean, even American players. Do you think that a team, let's take, New Orleans, for example, which had over 25 guys from the team in season 2, stay over the summer and in the fall and just train and work out together during the off season, help coach youth clubs, help coach senior clubs? Do you really think those guys who are getting embedded in the New Orleans community are going to uproot themselves and move to Glendale? Do you really think?
That's what I don't know. I want to hear the plan because, that's New Orleans is a good example. But, a lot of these people, I think, go back to their non-MLR clubs in the fall and they play another.
Chicago is an example of that where you had Angus McClellan the last 2 off seasons went back to the Lions and played in the Midwestern Rugby Premiership, MWRP, I think is what it was called.
No.
So, I mean, a lot of these guys, if they aren't staying, they're going home where they can be on their parents' couch and not pay rent, and they'll play rugby and stay fit and, do other things to make some cash. Yeah. So I don't see how they will. The biggest thing for me is I don't see how Glendale as a place stays with the heartbeat of developing American rugby players. If they have the facility to do this, do they somehow finagle their way to become the training center of the U.S. Eagles?
Yeah.
It's a facility that could do that.
That's what they seem to be suggesting. They're not saying anything specific, but again, okay, Glendale, whatever you're going to be, Glendale Academy, give me your coach, give me your funding source. That's what I want to know to have a sense of whether I think that's a realistic outcome.
But as far as like fans coming back, I think the fans were tied to Glendale, the MLR team.
Yeah. Well, if it's not during the MLR season, what teams are they playing?
Because if you watch, I'll be honest. I mean, I watch the WPL games because I'm a nut, and I watch the WPL games when they're not on Flow. I think they were on Flow.
You're right.
When they're available, I watch so I think Glendale has them on their website on Infinity Park Stream, and when they're on, they're not people going to Glendale rugby games. I'll be honest. There weren't really that many people going to Glendale. I mean, during that season that they played 10 exhibition games in the MRC, the Major Rugby Championship, there weren't that many people going to those games. It looked like a normal club season, except that you had to pay admission.
Yeah.
I'll buy a beer. I'll buy a burger, but I have a hard time with you telling me that I got to pay $10 to come watch amateur rugby. Could this be, I guess, a return of the shamateurism era, where like everyone that played at Almback worked at a bar that was owned by a club old boy? Is that gonna? I mean, Glendale paid players. They used to like give them jobs. Is that what happens again? Because
I'm fine with it. I don't think it's illegal. I mean, that's the strategy.
As long as they're doing the job,
yeah,
that's all that matters.
Right. Yeah. So, but like to your point about fans, I mean, how presumably fans are not coming to watch drills; they're coming to see contests. So, I mean, who are they playing against? Maybe they have some creative idea. Maybe it's going to be East versus West.
Rugby X on a full-size field.
They play the XFL teams. They play a game of football, a game of rugby.
Cross-code
yeah.
challenge.
They play college teams. I don't know what the plan is going to be, but it's just hard to assess right now because there's so few details. And even this is speculating because maybe that's not their plan at all. All we know for sure is that they claim that they're going to be focused on developing the national team and less so on commercial success of rugby.
So, I mean, if that's the case, then you're going to see tests hosted at Glendale and you're going to see training camps at Glendale. And if that's the case, okay, cool. And that's it. You know, I don't really see, if you look at this whole system, the Merlins this year did not field a second team. And when they rebranded the Raptors amateur side as the Merlins, they had two teams. The D2 team went up to D1 and played in Red River. And then last year in 2019, they withdrew from the Red River and joined the PRP. They were playing in the PRP and they lost all 3 games. They were getting beat up. There was no D2 team registered within the Frontier region, or there was no second men's team registered in the Frontier region in either D2 or D3. So I don't know. I mean, it's also like Glendale is not that big of a town. So most of the guys, I would say, well, maybe not most of them, but I would say more than a handful of guys that have played for Glendale previously did not live in Glendale. Not that that's a problem. I'm just saying is like they don't really have a base to draw from.
Yeah. All told, it's just, you know, you hate to see it. I feel bad for the players that are kind of thrown to the wind here. And I am hopeful. I want to see whatever they're going to. I want the USA team to be good. So if that's their goal, I support that goal 100%. And I'm hoping they're going to be successful. I'm just looking forward to finding some details.
If they become a training center for the U.S. national team, that's cool. Because one thing that USA Rugby doesn't have is a designated training center for the national teams.
Yeah, not for 15s. Yeah.
Yeah, not for 15s. I mean, for 7s, we use Chula Vista, but it's like not necessarily ours. Whereas this is all rugby all the time, so you could do. I think you could do a lot of things there because they have the stadium and 2 fields and a gym and all sorts of stuff.
Centrally located, so you can gather people from across the country and reasonable expense.
So we'll see. If that's the case, that it wouldn't be a bad idea for most people involved. If it's mutually beneficial. If the union gains a lot from it, then cool.
Yeah, great. I would love that. I'm cheering for that outcome. So, Glendale, whoever your secretive owner is, let's make that happen.
So that's our commentary on the MLR draft and the Raptors ceasing to exist unless Glendale rebrands their amateur programs back as the Raptors. So there's that. However, you can catch us Wednesday. I think we said 7 p.m. Eastern.
7 p.m. Eastern, yes.
7 p.m. Eastern. 4 p.m. Pacific time.
Excited.
Super podcast.
I tweeted out to the Twitterverse to get ideas for who people thought should be the first overall pick. Nobody, there were some likes and retweets. Nobody actually gave an answer. If you guys see that tweet, I want to know your opinions on who you guys think is the first overall pick. I think I have one in mind, but I can be convinced otherwise.
Who you picking, Joe Peterson?
I'm taking Beast right now as my first.
Tendai M. Tamawiro, the first overall pick. So we're gonna do something cool. Andy, I think we need to talk to the people. We're gonna have Preston from Red, White, and Black Eye. Josh, the chief writer for Earful of Dirt, is going to reprise his previous role, and he is going to pick
suffering Glendale.
He's a suffering Glendale fan. And Preston, So Preston from Red, White, and Black Eye, the American Rugby Pod, is gonna pick, and then Derek Brissett from LaRouge Rugby Podcast is also going to be picking.
Toronto's out of the real draft. Derek's into the fantasy draft.
Yeah, so we're going to pick coaching staffs for, I guess, one of the rounds. I think we might pick it first, or we might pick it last. We'll figure it out. But there will be 6 pickers and 16 rounds. So it will be a great time, and see you all on Wednesday night, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific time.